My name's Dave Steele and I'm also known as the Blind Poet. I am 44 and I'm from Manchester. My eye condition is called retinitis pigmentosa, or RP for short. It's a hereditary condition, so it runs in the family, and the particular type that I have is what they call autosomal dominant, which means there's a clear trace through my family. Every time a child is born, there's a 1 in 2 chance that that child will be affected by RP. Now, with my particular gene type, it doesn't normally present the first stages until kind of late teens, early 20s, which is when I was first aware of the sort of the effects of it. It starts with night blindness, so struggling from light to dark places. So, for example, if a person, a fully sighted person, is walking from outside into maybe a cinema, it will take them a few seconds for their eyes to adjust. With RP, when you have the night blindness, your eyes just don't adjust to those low light situations. So I had that probably from my early 20s up until my late 30s, and then the next kind of stage with RP is you start to lose your peripheral vision. So that's why they call it tunnel vision. So it's like a tunnel closing inwards until you can see basically through a pinhole, and then your central vision is attacked next. So the way I see is my left eye at the moment is completely blurred, so I've lost all kind of useful vision in my left eye, and my right eye, I've lost all my peripheral. I have about 3 degrees left, and it's like looking through a straw. So the little bit of clear vision that I have is still pretty useful. I can still read text if it's big enough. I can still see parts of faces. So if I'm close up to someone, I can see like just probably their eye, and then everything kind of gets blurred around that, or is not there. The first time I started to notice that my sight was going was probably in my early 20s, when I started to have the night blindness. But it wasn't affecting my day-to-day kind of work. I was able to get around myself, I was able to drive safely, but was struggling just from light to dark places. So I was probably in denial about it a little bit. And I was working as a singer at the time, so I was kind of working all over the world, and being a young kind of guy, you know, touring about all over the place and enjoying my life. I went for a routine eye test at my optician's, and when they looked into the back of my eyes, they said, whoa, hang on a second, the pigment is really quite thick now, you need to stop driving straight away. And that was when things really kind of drastically changed for me. My wife, as she is now, Amy, we were engaged then at the time. She was sat out in the waiting room. We'd not long had a son together who was about 6 months old at the time. I'd just proposed to get married. We'd set a date, and I was working in car sales. I was still working as a singer. And when I walked out of that optician's appointment and was told that I had to stop driving straight away, I had to, you know, I knew that everything was going to change, but I didn't know how drastically things were going to change. My employers let me go, so I lost my job. And yeah, we really struggled to get the support out there. All the while I was struggling with my drastic change in vision as my peripheral started to go on a week-to-week basis. It was really dipping that quickly. I lost all my peripheral vision within the space of about 6 months from that first diagnosis. And I was struggling with anxiety and depression, not just from my vision loss, but also for the financial pressure that I was putting on my family. We got to the stage where we couldn't afford to pay the rent on the house we were staying in, so we had to move into social housing. There was a 9-month waiting list for the main benefit support, which is personal independence payment, while I was being assessed, and all the while we were struggling to feed the kids. We had to feed our kids on food parcels for a little while. I was feeling, you know, more guilty about the pressure it was putting on my family, and that in turn was affecting my vision loss as well, and I became more anxious and more isolated because of it. In those early kind of days of feeling anxious about it, and I still get it now to a certain degree, is it can be a lot of effort sometimes just to go out, and sometimes you just want to take a break from your blindness. And so when I'm in my own environment, when I'm at home, I don't use my cane in the house. I don't need my guide dog to go to room. I can move around like pretty much anyone, apart from occasionally bumping into a door frame or anything like that. But when you're out in a new environment, or out in a dimly lit bar or restaurant or things like that, it can make you anxious quite naturally. And there's not really a lot you can do about that, whether you're fully cane trained or anything, or how far down this journey you actually are. And sometimes you just want to take a break from being the blind guy So sometimes the easiest thing is to maybe become a little bit more isolated, even though it's not the best thing to do at times. So there are lots of common misconceptions regarding low vision and vision loss. The biggest one being most people think you're either completely blind or you're not at all. They think that you have to look a certain way to be blind. So for example, I have a guide dog, and when I go out with my guide dog, people will come up to me and go, "Oh, you're training him?" And I go, "No, he's my guide dog." And they go, "Oh, you don't look blind." And then you have to kind of explain. And that's a constant battle. Now the issue with that is, and it's no one's fault by the way, it's just a lack of awareness, a lack of education that's out there, that people think, you have to look a certain way to be visually impaired or blind means that you see nothing at all. 96% I think it is of people with a visual impairment have some kind of useful vision. Most of us don't look a certain way. What does a blind person look like? They just look like everyone else. But the problem with that is, I speak to people all over the world, with low vision, and they'll say to me, "Oh, I'm not blind enough to use a cane yet," or "I've not lost enough of my sight yet to apply for a guide dog or use a mobility aid." And I'll say to them, "Do you find yourself not going out to certain places because of how your vision is?" And they say, "Yeah." And I go, "Well, you're ready then." But because they don't fit into that perceived box of what a blind person apparently is supposed to look like, the unfortunate side of those misconceptions is that a lot of people will become needlessly isolated because they feel as if they're not at that stage yet where they are allowed to use a cane. Often when I am travelling about, if I'm going on a train or on a plane, I will have assistance at the train station or the plane or the airport to help me through a busy platform or busy terminal and onto the plane. But then as soon as I get sat down on the train or whatever, I will fold my cane away, pull up my mobile phone, and I'll be on Facebook or I'll be watching a film, and people will be looking at me kind of strange because they're thinking, well, how is he able to do that but he's visually impaired or blind? And that's that misconception of you're either completely blind or you're not at all. I have no peripheral. It's like looking through a straw, but I can still watch a film, and I can still go on Facebook, and using the accessibility features on my phone, I'm able to use it in a way like other people can. But a lot of people are unaware of that still, and then there certainly needs to be more education regards to breaking down those misconceptions, because not only is it a lack of awareness and lack of education for people, but it is affecting people taking the help that's out there because of feeling awkward or being judged out in public. The most challenging parts of living with low vision is not just a thing of soon I'm not going to be able to see my wife's face or my children's faces and adapting to that new world and the constantly adjusting to my vision fading, but it's doing those simple daily tasks. It's doing the things that most people take for granted. Does it get easier with time? Do you get over these things? Do you get over the anxiety? Do you get over the depression and the feelings that you have with low vision that a lot of people go through? These things for me will never go away. I will always have to live with these things, but what I know now is that it's perfectly normal. When I have my bad eye days, I tend to beat myself up and I'm too hard on myself because of my feelings and the things that I'm going through due to my low vision. But the difference in me now is I know that these things won't last, these bad days won't last. It's okay to go there, but it's not okay to stay there, I always say, and it will pass. So when I go out and tackle these situations, I'm still as anxious as I was, but I'm better at moving forward now. So what I say is I've learned to breathe while I still grieve. So I'm still grieving for the sight I've lost and the sight I'm yet to lose, but I'm now better at still doing these things, and even though I'm still feeling it and still just as anxious, I won't let it stop me. So my advice to anyone that's recently been diagnosed with low vision or sight loss or blindness, in all its variables, is just to not be too hard on yourself, not to panic and not to think that it's the end of the world, because it's not. I speak to people who have got no light perception whatsoever, and they are the most well-rounded, adapted people that I've ever met. The way they've adapted to the world when you've got no choice to adapt is just amazing. For someone like myself who is losing their sight over a gradual period, that can be the hardest thing. It's that constantly adjusting, and quite often we rush ourselves to try and get over it, and we become frustrated. I think frustration is a really good word. It's that frustration of dropping something on the floor and looking around trying to find it, and not being able to see a thing that's right there in front of you. I do it all the time with a remote control. You're constantly trying to find something that's right there, or you knock something over. I'm constantly breaking glasses in the house, spilling things when I go out in public places, and that sometimes is it's the hardest part of it. It's that frustrating thing. But if you can kind of take a step back and go, what I'm feeling here, this frustration, this anxiety, is perfectly natural. I'm not weird for feeling this. There is so many other people out there who are feeling these things. Then, you can take a step back and go, okay, I know I'm not weird for feeling this. It's perfectly natural. I'm going to be a little bit easier on myself, and like everything in life, it will pass. These things will pass. Everyone has good days and bad days, but it's like just allowing yourself that time to breathe and grieve, and have your little pity party for a few hours or a day or whatever, but knowing that you don't need to stay there. And also speaking to other people as well. When I first started my journey with sight loss, the biggest turning point for me was getting involved in social media. My sister said to me, get involved on social media, join some of these support groups online, and speak to other people who are going through the same thing. That was when kind of things started to turn around for me. So to go into a little bit about my story and why I'm now known as the blind poet and I do the things that I do, is I was at probably my lowest ebb. I was really, really struggling. I remember, talking about the financial pressure of things. We'd fell behind with bills while we were waiting on support, and we were struggling to feed the kids, and falling into debt week by week. It was just getting worse and worse and worse, and every time we applied for help, we were getting doors slammed in our faces. And it just got to the stage where I remember just taking an absolute meltdown of guilt that this financial pressure was being put on my family. Anything to do with finance, because I felt so guilty about it. I just couldn't hear it. I just couldn't hear it. I just wanted to switch off. And and when I made that leap of starting to speak on the social groups and speak to other people and connect with people who were going through the same thing, that was a real massive, massive help to me. Through my online conversations with people on Facebook for some of the RP specific pages, I got invited to a support group, and because they heard I'd worked as a singer, they asked me if I would be the entertainment for this support group meeting day. And I was like, absolutely. This is something that will really help me, because being on stage was always my comfort zone. It was where I felt comfy. I was feeling socially anxious and depressed about doing the day-to-day things with low vision, but being on stage and being in that kind of environment with a microphone and performing songs was a great kind of outlet for me, and a great way of me being able to feel comfortable again. I always say to people that when I started to lose my sight, when I walked out of that optician's being diagnosed, I lost my confidence through the way the system was. I lost my pride, I lost my independence, but the biggest thing it took from me was my purpose. I didn't know what I was going to do next. So when I was asked to go and sing at that event, I thought, yeah, this would be a great thing for me to do. This would be a start. So the night before the event, I was in bed and I was going over ideas of songs to sing the following day. And I had this moment where everything changed, and it's kind of led me to where I am right now. I had this idea where I thought it'd be a great idea to take a song that everyone knew, but change the words so it would have more of an emotional response, more impact. So I chose the song Stand By Me by Benny King because I love the opening line of when the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see, because that was like night blindness. So within 20 minutes I rewrote the entire song in bed. And what happened was I went and performed it the following day, and the emotional response when I sang that song just kind of changed everything for me. It gave me my purpose back. People were coming up to me saying that the words that I had written was able to describe how they'd always felt about their journey with sight loss, but they were unable to find the words themselves. And that was when I found my purpose again. So music and poetry to me is the same thing. It's song lyrics. So my way of coming to terms with my low vision and my journey was to start writing every single day about everything that we were going through as a family, whether it would be the good days, the bad eye days as I call them, and documenting my journey in poetry, in lyrics. And every time I posted one of these poems out on social media, on one of these RP groups, I would get messages from people all over the world saying that I was able to describe how they felt about their sight loss. It was making them feel like they were less alone, and they were using my words as a tool to communicate to their loved ones how they felt when they couldn't find the words themselves. So they'd point to a particular poem and say, this one here, this is how I'm feeling today. And it just went on from there. I was writing every day, sometimes 2 or 3 a day, to the point now where I've written 3 books and written over 700 poems. And every time I get a message that helps another person, that rebuilds something in me. So the basis of everything I do now, speaking at events all over the world and writing the books and writing the poetry to help people, is making that connect, using social media to be able to write something that takes literally 20 minutes, because I've never written a poem that takes longer than 20 minutes, because if it's not flowing from the heart, it's not worth writing. Click a button and send it to some far corner of the world where there might be someone newly diagnosed who has never met another visually impaired person in their life, but all of a sudden will read these words and, like a song, you know, we've all had a particular song that's maybe gotten us through a rough time, a teenage heartbreak or whatever, but they read this poem that speaks to them and describes how they're feeling at that time, and that is able to then help them and realise that they're not alone and what they're going through is perfectly normal, and lift them out of it. All the tears that I have shed and these scars upon my wrist have made me who I am today, prepared me now for this. I wouldn't be so strong if I had never failed before. I'd still be isolated, scared to step outside my door. I'm not saying that I'm over this. Those bad eye days still come. For even now, whilst reading this, I'm blinded by the sun. I'm anxious and my chest is tight. I feel like giving in. But deep inside my heart I know I'll never let this win. I promised just 6 years ago, when blindness certified, through poetry I'd share my tale to others far and wide, so no one ever need to feel alone with losing sight, explain their thoughts to loved ones through these verses that I write. But never did I imagine that my words could do so much. They've healed the hearts of strangers, opened doors with slightest touch. I'll be a friend, my pride will mend, my purpose clear to see. 3 books will be my legacy, my Stand By Me RP. I know that soon these faces that I look upon today will disappear, but I won't fear, these memories will stay. My wife, my sons, my daughter, in here will never age. My love for them is printed in each poem, verse and page. When last has gone, I'll carry on to make my family proud, to be a voice for others, to help them lift this hazy shroud, inspire them to grab a cane and step outside their homes. 4 words, each poem's message, saying you are not alone.
Our videos are helping people across the world. If you found them useful, please donate on our website so we can keep making more videos like this in the future.
Henshaws, supporting people with sight loss and a range of other disabilities to go beyond expectations.